What's up, friends, and welcome back to the show. Today in the studio, I had the grounded athlete, Mr. Rob, also known as Earth Papi. This is such a fascinating man. He describes grounding in a way that is so approachable, but still with enough science to convince even the most materialist scientific type that this is what you need to be doing for your health. So, of course, we talk a lot about grounding, how grounding is so much more than just putting your bare feet in the grass, that you can do grounding for hours a day if you're intentional about it. But we get into his life, his upbringing. He was raised on a reservation as a Lakota tribe member until he graduated into high school, where he found track and athletics and everything that he's doing to optimize his performance and thrive in this life. He's also got an incredible handcrafted footwear company called Olympus, and we talk about all of it. So let's get into it with the grounded athlete. Rob, the grounded athlete, welcome to the studio, my friend.
Pleasure to be here to discuss some very interesting aspects of health, which is where grounding comes into the picture. But
Yeah,
I'm always happy to have these conversations.
Yeah, me too.
Excited, so.
I've followed you for a while, and I think you approach this topic in a very interesting way. And that's why I really wanted to speak to you. We've got a lot of shared interests outside of this topic. Jiu-jitsu, athletics, Olympic lifting, trying to be fit, all of those fun things. But why is grounding so central to everything that you do? Like, why the grounded athlete?
Well, I got into grounding through my training and through track and field, and it was a big part of my whole regimen. And it's the natural state of your body. It's the natural electrical state of your body, which is implicated in all aspects of your health, your performance, just how your body runs. And I didn't realize at first, when I first got into grounding, how transformative the process is, far beyond performance. But this is how your body is meant to exist on this earth, electrically grounded to the earth. So,
do you think that it's fair to say, ancestrally speaking, that we were almost always grounded, and the modern state of normal is insulated, I think is the word that you use a lot, or disconnected, and that would probably pattern match with increasing chronic diseases and disconnection from nature as well?
Absolutely. And most of our time here on this planet has been electrically grounded to the earth, and only in the last 100 or so years we've introduced the rubber soles and the synthetic flooring and a lot of the electro pollution that interferes with the natural electrical balance of our body, and that has pretty far-reaching implications as far as disease and the degeneration of our health. So
you keep using this term, electrically grounded. Now, I think for the layperson, they would think that, what do you mean? You're plugging something into the ground? But
Sure.
when I think I know what you're saying, but clarify that a little bit.
Yeah, and I always begin this conversation, especially when people are skeptical of the practice of grounding. I always try and see it from the electrical engineering aspect of it and the grounding of electrical systems. And so, all the appliances, this building's whole electrical system is grounded to the earth. And it's grounded to the earth because in the case of, something happens, like a ground fault, short circuit, and heaven forbid, like a lightning strike hit this place, that's a lot of excess electrical energy in the system, and that energy needs a place to go. And so that's why the system is grounded to the earth. It gives that excess electrical energy a place to go. And so it's the same idea with the body. You have this buildup of excess electrical energy built up on the body, and the grounding gives that excess electrical energy a place to go. And that is, so what happens essentially when you're grounded is the electrical potential of your body becomes that of the earth's. And so you are at this equipotential. And so sort of electrostatics, very, very easy, is when two conductors with different potentials come into contact with each other, they will equalize to the same potential. And that is by definition grounding. You, at least for the human body, you are at the same potential as the earth.
So you are plugging the human back into the earth.
You are plugging the human back into the earth, yes.
Is this I hear of the Schumann resonance, often called like the heartbeat of the earth. Is that tied into this too?
Yeah, the Schumann resonance is part of what I call the Earth circuit, and that's actually why the Earth is negatively charged. It's a very cool series of phenomena that are going on constantly. I don't know if you're interested in that. I can tie that back into the Schumann resonance. So, a lot of people ask, why is the Earth negatively charged? It's due to various atmospheric and cosmological phenomena. Mostly, solar radiation coming into the Earth's atmosphere, ionizing the molecules in the upper atmosphere, and all those ionized, all those ions getting pushed around with ionospheric winds. But the biggest generator would be thunderstorms and lightning strikes. And so with the thunderstorm clouds, there's essentially this separation of charge in the cloud, a negative charge in the top of the cloud, positive charge in the bottom of the cloud. And so when that reaches this sort of critical threshold, it starts to ionize the air molecules, and it creates the lightning channel, and that's when we get our lightning. And that is essentially this transfer of negative charge to the surface of the earth, positive charge back up to the upper atmosphere. But every time those lightning strikes happen, that essentially creates these standing waves in the Earth's atmosphere, and that's what you just referred to as the Schumann resonance. And these tend to resonate at certain frequencies. The one that a lot of people are familiar with is 7.83 hertz, which is very similar to the alpha band brainwave state, which is kind of your Zen focused state. And that's essentially what the Schumann resonance is. Grounding, I don't believe, has much to do with the Schumann resonance. I think just being outside, being in nature, is going to connect you to that Schumann resonance. And that's why a big reason why people feel so good when they're out in nature and when they're outside. So they're connected to that Schumann resonance. So.
Yeah, I'm being a bit facetious, but I often say, like, it's hard to be depressed at the beach.
Absolutely.
Right? Because, the sun is shining, the wind is moving, the waves are lapping, you are plugged in, you're grounded, hopefully, like, actually in the water, a huge source of negative ions, I believe.
Absolutely.
Help me understand, because negative is the positive in this sense, right? Like, negative being what we want more of, because I believe that the average human that is disconnected and insulated from the world is overburdened with more positive ions, and they want to ground to get more of the negative charge of the earth.
Absolutely. We live in a state of positive charge, and that's mostly induced through the appliances that we use, the communication systems that we use, electro pollution pretty much, and various other things, but insulation in conjunction with the things that we expose ourselves to, particularly the electro pollution, tends to build up this positive charge in our body, which is no bueno. That's definitely interfering with the electrical homeostasis of your body, and so that's where grounding comes into the picture.
Yes. Do you believe that there is a significant health cost to EMFs, this EMF soup that we live in, from Wi-Fi routers, smart devices, Apple Watches, all of that stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more people are starting to get the hang of this idea that this is not good for our health, particularly the ones that we're most concerned with, the ones that we're most exposed to, the extremely low frequency electromagnetic radiation, the radio frequencies, the microwaves that our wiring gives off, 50 to 60 hertz alternating currents in the wires and the Wi-Fi and the phones and all that. These all interfere with the electrical balance of your body. They induce charges on your body through a process called capacitive coupling. And so, this is essentially, I keep bringing this back to the same thing, is it's all interfering with the electrical balance of your body.
Yeah.
So.
And my kind of more layman's understanding of this is that we are told by whoever it is, big tech, that you don't need to be concerned about things like Wi-Fi radiation and stuff because it's non-ionizing. So the reason we recognize that X-rays, for example, can be problematic, and they say don't come in the room, is because it's an ionizing radiation, right? It can literally alter DNA, but these low-grade non-ionizing radiations can still potentially be harmful because your body is essentially an electric system, and this is interfering with that, and you have like these voltage-gated calcium channels on cells that become dysfunctional and all manner of other things. So it's not as simple as to say, you don't need to worry about if you've got your phone in your pocket and it's blasting you with Bluetooth all day because it's not ionizing. It still is causing biological effects.
Right, and because it's not ionizing, a lot of people think, it can't be that bad, but it actually is. It is very bad, and there's a lot of research out there on chronic exposure to these types of radiation, as far as like the development of certain cancers, leukemia, people that are in these high sort of electrical exposure occupations developing leukemia, and It's an interesting world we found ourselves in, just constantly being exposed to things like this. And I believe the World Health Organization classifies these non-ionizing EMFs, the ones that we just discussed, as a class 2B carcinogen, which is considered possibly carcinogenic. But for anyone, I think that should be enough to stir up some emotions in you and make you want to keep your distance and take measures to limit your exposure to these things. Obviously, it's not practical to, not be exposed during the day. You have, in this day and age, you have to use your phone, and you have to be exposed to these things, and you can try not to be too neurotic about it. Right. But it is very, very consequential for our health, and it essentially it makes your body more prone to noise, especially when you're not grounded, when you're insulated. So the signal to noise ratio is definitely improved when you're grounded, because when you're grounded, you essentially have this umbrella that the earth gives you that sort of blocks out all of these electric fields, these foreign frequencies. And when you're not grounded, your body acts like this sort of antenna that soaks all those things in, and that's why they're particularly detrimental when you're insulated. Mm-hmm. And so, a lot can be said about non-native electromagnetic radiation, and there's a lot of really good resources out there. But it is sort of a sad situation we find ourselves in. But what can you do besides?
It's interesting, right? Because I think you're dead on when you say that people are acknowledging that there are potential risks here, or maybe not even potential risks, just risks. Let's call it what it is. And that the world seems to be moving in one direction, which is more of those risks. Smarter homes, smarter everything. Everything's going smart. Everything's going digital. AI, everything, self-driving cars, you name it. Like that seems to be where we're going very, very quickly. And then you wake up to some of these things having consequences, and you're like, there's it's very easy to get lost in the sauce, right? Yeah. It's very easy to have an unhealthy obsession with health when you're aware of all of the inputs, because you're like, everything's trying to kill us. And it can get pretty crazy pretty quickly. And that's why we need to relax. I like you, when you said noise, it made me think of, I realized recently that noise comes from the Latin nausea. And the most obvious example of nausea, when we call it, is sickness. When we feel nauseous, we feel sick. Yeah. And that the noise that you're talking about also makes us sick. And maybe not in the most obvious sense that, like, I'm nauseous, I'm going to puke, but it's this chronic disease burden that modern humans are clearly experiencing at unprecedented levels. We are sicker than we've ever been, despite having more of the tech, more of the knowledge, more of the access to information. So there's something fundamentally running against the way that things should be, I would say. Yeah.
Exactly. That's a very cool word, Latin derivative. So
yes,
definitely makes sense though.
Yeah. So I think you would argue that one of the maybe even the best way to rally against this unnatural EMF soup disconnected world is to ground. So yes. What exactly happens when you ground? We've started discussing that, but I go outside right now, I put my bare feet in the ground. What does it do to all of the other noise in the system, and what does it actually do from a health, balance, homeostasis standpoint in the body?
Right. And so when you establish electrical connection with the earth, either directly, being outside or inside with grounding mats and stuff, again, your body equalizes with the potential of the earth, and so you have this sort of force field, this shield around you that is preventing you from experiencing foreign noise from being introduced into your body. And as you pointed out earlier, your body is really this electrical system. It's based on voltage gradients, the movement of ions all around the body. And so the body can't do this efficiently when there's noise introduced, when there's electromagnetic noise introduced. It doesn't allow the body to behave in a coherent state. And so when you establish that electrical connection with the earth, a lot of really cool things happen. They happen in the nervous system, they happen in the cardiovascular system, happen in the immune system as far as performance goes. But I always tell people this when I tell them the benefits of grounding, that it's important to not miss the forest for the trees. There's a lot of really cool benefits that we can talk about, but I think a lot of them boil down to sort of these core mechanisms that I like to talk about, and I wrote about them in my book. I called them the big three. And the big three is, number one, and that grounding increases the density of negative charge in your body. That's the natural electrical state of your body. That's what it's meant to be maintained at. That's basically this lower entropy, low noise state. And number two is that it increases your capacity to manage oxidative stress and inflammation. which goes back to disease, and we can talk about that as well. And number 3 is the more esoteric side of things, and I'm sure you're no stranger to esoteric health, is that it charges the water protein matrix battery, and there's a lot to unpack in each one of those bullet points there. But a lot of the benefits in the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, immune system, are all kind of downstream effects of these core mechanisms that are going on when you ground. So.
What I've really come to appreciate about following you on X and things like that is that I think a lot of people think of grounding as something just hippies say, like it's woo-woo. What do you just go, put your bare feet in the grass and everything's going to figure itself out? And, well, maybe, yes. But, there is a good amount of science. So you recently posted about the grounded babies. I think it was in a NICU. Talk to me about that a little bit, because that was fascinating just to read. And they look at this stuff. They know it has consequences.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest reasons. This gets into one of the biggest reasons people feel so calm when they're grounded. And that has to do with vagal tone. And so you have your autonomic nervous system, which is your involuntary nervous system. It's composed of your parasympathetic, your sympathetic nervous system. And most people tend to be in this oversympathetic state. So they're always kind of stressed in this fight or flight state, as opposed to more of the rest and digest. I mean, you don't want to be too far in either direction, but just kind of right in the middle. And so they basically took these preterm babies in the NICU that are in these incubators, and so they're exposed to a lot of non-native electromagnetic radiation. And they measured the HRV, which that's sort of how you assess this whole vagal tone thing. So what vagal tone is, it's the status of your vagal nerve, which is the longest cranial nerve. And one way to assess the status of your vagal tone, your vagal nerve, is through HRV. It's through heart rate variability, which is the variation in the time interval between each heartbeat. And so higher HRV essentially means you're more capable of dealing with stress. It's very indicative of this balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic. And what they found with these preterm infants that are essentially in this stress state, because they're in this very electropolluted state, and they're very prone to a condition called necrotizing enterocolitis, which is sort of this very degenerative gut condition that can kill them. And so they found that vagal tone through HRV was improved in these babies. And they also found a very interesting relationship, an inverse relationship between skin voltage and vagal tone. So the higher the voltage is built up on the skin, the lower the vagal tone. And so it was a very, very cool study. They've also looked at other studies just looking at HRV by itself. HRV is alone is an independent indicator of heart disease, along with many, many other things. It's a very cool thing, and a lot of the calm that you get from grounding is due to this vagal stimulation.
Very interesting.
And there's a lot of other things that are happening in the brain, as far as alpha band brainwave activity being more active. They've done EEGs, they've done EMGs on people as far as when they're grounded, and seeing how that affects things, and they've found a lot of cool things as far as again that improved alpha band brainwave activity, as far as the EMG stuff, muscle tonicity, and so people that are really tense in the muscles, and people that are under tense in the muscles, those tend to improve. So people that are over tense tend to lighten up. People that are under tense tend to get a little bit more higher tone in their muscle tone. So that's very cool. They've also, they looked at PSQI scores for people that struggle with sleep. People that the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index is a pretty common assessment for people to assess how they're sleeping. And so they looked at some Alzheimer's patients, and they utilized them for that study, and they found pretty significant improvements in that. They've looked at anxiety-like behavior in rats for rats that are grounded, and they found less anxious behavior in rats. And I think a couple big ones would be cortisol and melatonin. And so cortisol is kind of all the rage, and has been all the rage for a while now. People are associated with as the stress hormone. Because a lot of people tend to have this dysregulated HPA axis, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. And And a big part of that is this sort of mismatch between the body and its environment, particularly in this collection of cells called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. And so, when the body is getting this mismatch of signals between light and it takes those signals and then it sort of transduces that into these pathways for the secretion of melatonin and cortisol. And so what happens as a result of this mismatch is people are releasing cortisol abnormally throughout the day.
Yeah.
So the normal sort of profile should be a spike in the morning. So
Yeah.
you want to wake up and then it levels off throughout the day. But nowadays it's kind of spikes all over the place. And it doesn't really mellow out towards the end of the day. And when you look at, and they've looked at various circadian cortisol secretions throughout the day and the patients and people in these studies, and they found that these they become much more synchronized with the natural cortisol secretion profile, what it's supposed to look like essentially. And so also with melatonin, I don't want to put too much emphasis on this one because it was an unpublished study, but over a few weeks they found like a 66% increase in melatonin production in people that are grounded. So there's a lot of really, really cool things that are happening as far as nervous system activity. So yeah, there's much more beyond that, but I'm just mentioning a few. So
yeah, and melatonin isn't just a sleep hormone; it's
right.
one of the master antioxidants, right?
Antioxidants, yeah.
When you were talking about that, it brought my mind to, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the podcaster Chris Williamson and his current health struggles, but he said he's been essentially on a very difficult health journey for 18 months. And a couple of months ago, he talked about how he got some blood work. And he said, in layman's terms, that essentially his cortisol-melatonin relationship was flipped, that his cortisol was all over the place and it wasn't natural. So he was sluggish and lethargic in the morning, and he was tired but wired at night. And since then, he's put out a video that's closing in on 2 million views about how he's had this chronic health battle for 18 months, and he can't get over it. And he's listing all the things that are going on. Epstein-Barr virus, Lyme, mold, chronic fatigue, brain fog. And this is a guy that's got arguably the fastest growing podcast in the world. And he's got Andrew Huberman's cell phone number. He's got Dr. Gabrielle Lyon on speed dial, Dr. Mark Atten, you name him. He's got access to these people because they've all been on his show. And none of them can figure it out. And it seems pretty clear from me, not that I'm a doctor by any means, that this guy is just completely disconnected from nature. He lives in a podcast studio. He's publishing 3 cinema production episodes per week. He's always on a plane. He's always in front of blue light. He's always under the lights. He, quite clearly, I've followed him for a long time and listened to many of his podcasts. He's an amazing mind, but he's very hard on himself. There's a lot of stress there. Yeah. And that a lot of this, it seems to me like the obvious solution is not all of this advanced testing and these ozone therapies that he's getting. A lot of it is like, Chris, you need to relax, man. You need to plug in. You need to ground. You need to get outside. You need to breathe again. And it's so interesting that you mentioned that cortisol melatonin piece in particular, because he was kind of riffing on that. And I wonder just the consequences of, he's created something so amazing and helped so many people, but almost destroyed himself in the process. Right. And I can't help but think of all the things you're talking about here. He's living the antithesis of that, completely disconnected and completely plugged in to everything that takes us away from the grounding, and would have the negative outcomes of everything that you just stated that grounding can positively affect. It's very interesting. Yeah.
People tend to reach for, all the advanced techniques and all the testing and things like that, when really, I think things are much more simple than we think. Just reconnecting to nature, grounding to the earth, getting the right light exposure, that can do multitudes for your health. And that does suck, but it's how he makes his living, and that's his mission in life. And sometimes you have to make sacrifices, and so it is what it is. So
well, what will be interesting is hopefully he figures this out one day. And what if he figures it out that his solution in the grand scheme of this, the final analysis, is, hey, actually, those things were a little bit helpful, but what I really realized is it's a stress load issue. I had to get outside. I had to start grounding more. I had to start breathing more, and voila, now we can give people back the basics, like you said, because the myth of more in our culture is very alive and well. If a little bit of something is good, more of it must be better. Right. But that becomes corporatized, and that becomes a marketing ploy. A little bit of exercise is good, then more must be better, to the point where now people are working out 2 times a day, 7 days a week, and over killing it. The dose makes the poison, right? I think the only thing we can confidently say is more grounding is better. The more grounding you can get, the better. Yeah. Now, when you were talking about the grounded babies and these other studies that look at people when they're sleeping and stuff, we need to define like how they grounded those people when they're sleeping in babies, because they're not throwing NICU babies out on the grass, right? Or when they're doing sleep studies, they're grounded in different means. So it's not always just bare feet in the grass. You can ground internally. How were they grounding the babies, for example, and what are other ways that we can ground if, for example, we do work a job where we're inside 6 hours a day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so there are a few different ways, and a lot of these studies, they either utilize a grounding wire, which is connected outside of the window into a ground rod, and that's connected to the earth outside, or they'll utilize the electrical system's grounding system. And then some studies, I believe one study, was just straight up, direct barefoot contact with the earth.
Yeah, just raw dog in the ground.
Yeah, just raw dog in the ground. Yeah, and so that's the way to do it, and that's one of the most confusing things about when people ask about indoor grounding is how can I ground indoors? It's like you're using a conductive material that's connected to the infrastructure's grounding system. You're not connecting yourself to any current or anything. You're connecting yourself to the pathway of dissipation in the case of something happens in that electrical system, but you're not connecting yourself to hot or neutral or anything in that wiring system. And so it's measurable with a multimeter too. And I always tell people before you use these products, you should take a few steps to make sure everything's in order. Two very cheap investments for you to get would be an outlet checker.
Yeah.
Which is basically you plug it in and it gives you this series of lights to let you know that the electrical system's
properly
actually grounded to the earth. Yeah. And then you want to test the product with a multimeter, and you go through the test to make sure that the body voltage is dropping when you're utilizing that product, tell you it's actually working. Because if the electrical system isn't properly grounded, this material is conductive.
Right.
And so what it can do is actually the opposite of what you want. Is it can attract
Yes.
Foreign frequencies, and that's what you're going to be touching or sleeping on. And so
is that the term dirty electricity?
Yeah, dirty electricity it's kind of this complicated. I don't want to say complicated, but it's essentially these foreign frequencies hitching a ride on the 50 to 60 hertz waveform, and that's you could be exposing your body to that, and that's up for debate. I think I don't worry too much about that. What I'm more concerned with is the voltage drop on the body. I think if you're getting the voltage drop on the body, you're going to be fine.
Okay.
You can be neurotic about it and get filters if you want to, but overall, I'm just looking at the voltage drop on your body.
Yeah.
So,
what kind of rules do you follow for yourself in terms of a minimum effective dose for grounding, and how are you habit stacking it? So I'm sure you're trying to get outside as much as possible. Do you personally sleep grounded when you're at a desk working? Do you have a mat? What do you suggest for other people to try and start to get them ground maxing a little bit more?
I've gotten this question quite a bit. It's how long do I need to ground a day, aka how little can I get away with? Yeah. And I give the most annoying answer in the world, and that answer is it depends. It depends on what kind of state you're in, what kind of oxidative stress state you're in, what kind of inflammatory state you're in, what kind of conditions that you're dealing with, because that'll determine how much grounding you really need on a daily basis. And people that are you've been insulated your whole life, sometimes you notice, and that's the interesting thing about grounding is that it's so subjective, it's so contextual. I can't tell you how it's going to affect one person compared to the next. For me, I don't notice that significant of a difference because a lot of my life is really dialed in. Yeah. But for someone that isn't that dialed in and they've been insulated a lot of their life, they'll notice pretty significant, drastic changes and how their brain is working and how their body's feeling. But a lot of these studies that I've referenced in this podcast, and ranging between like 40 minutes to 2 hours to a full night of sleep. So I can't give anybody like a general recommended dose. Anything's better than nothing. So I would shoot for maybe 20, 30 minutes a day. Yeah. For me, I sleep grounded, and so that's 9 hours. It's 9 hours right there. Working on my computer when I'm doing research, when I'm writing, I have a grounding mat underneath my keyboard, which I'm kind of doubling as this mouse pad, and that's a few hours right there. And so I'm doing my best to be grounded most of my day. Yeah. And so And that's what you should strive for. That's what humans are. That's how we're meant to operate.
Yeah.
Grounded 24/7.
Yeah.
So.
The sleep one seems like an obvious like big win
Easy.
if you can get that done,
Yeah.
because hopefully you're in that bed 7 to 9 hours every single night, and just you can kind of set it and forget it, know that you're grounded when the body is doing almost all of its recovery and healing in that delicate phase too, that you're creating the perfect state for it to do it now. Or you can just go sleep on the ground and, like throw it back a little bit, and that would be great too. I'm sure you're familiar with Clint Ober. It's kind of like, one of the grandfathers in this space, if you will. And I had him on the podcast a long time ago, but he was basically talking about something similar, that if somebody lives a more natural lifestyle, they're not going to feel as many of the benefits palpably. But if he's got somebody that's sick and they're saying like, okay, well, how long will it take to fix what I've got? And he's like, as long as it takes, but here's what we're going to do. We're basically just going to ground you 24/7 until you're no longer sick. And he talks about numerous cases where you'd have pretty profound things going on with people that he was helping. And for some, it would take a day, and for some it would take weeks, and for some it would take months. And I think that's probably that consequence of how insulated and disconnected they've been for a long time, but that this was the thing that healed him. He didn't have any knowledge of the other lifestyle practices maybe that we do. He wasn't talking about food or seed oils or organic, but he was just like, I'm pretty confident that the natural state of the body is health and it wants to heal, and if you provide the circumstances and environment that it can do that, and it will do that. Granted, there's no obvious injury in the process, so he was just plugging people in and giving them as long as it took to ground and heal, and it was happening, which is just fascinating.
Yes. So again, goes back to that it's very contextual, very subjective for each individual.
Yeah. When you said a few moments ago that you think our culture just has a tendency to over complexify for the sake of it, and that a lot of the solutions that we're looking for are probably in something like simplicity and a more natural state of being, how much of that is informed by your upbringing and being in, like, living on a reservation, being native, and the relationship to nature, and how like animistic everything is and how connected it is? How much of that has informed your like philosophy and worldview since then?
Yeah, and to add to what you're saying, there is this sort of pipeline that a lot of people will follow, in that they start with this really sort of complex regimen, and then it simplifies over time. Sort of this addition by subtraction sort of deal.
Yeah, that's been my story too.
Yeah, and that should be the way it is. And I grew up on the reservation, Lakota Sioux in South Dakota, and man, we didn't do too many things out there. We lived a pretty simple way. Ate real food, a lot of buffalo meat, a lot of barefoot time on the earth. A lot of the ceremonies that we would do would be barefoot or in moccasins. So just try to be connected to the earth as much as we can. And the earth is considered very, very, very sacred in Lakota culture, and that's why a lot of our ceremonies are barefoot and in moccasins, and that's to show respect for the earth, Mother Earth, and just eating real food, real natural food, getting barefoot time, being out in the sun. Like, we didn't do too much beyond that. And a lot of the people that I was around growing up were like the fittest, like healthiest, most vital looking people, I've ever seen. Yeah. And coming, to Iowa, where I start to see not as much vitality and more fat people, and it's interesting. And so we didn't do too much. Kept things pretty simple, which I like, and that's always kind of stuck with me throughout my life. So. Yeah,
I was very lucky actually to be. I was probably like 27 or 8 years old, and there was a few year stretch where I lived in upstate New York, and I got connected to a teacher who was Lakota and was invited to incredible ceremonies and sweat lodges, and just was able to just be in his presence and just learn of that, like the respect and the reverence for nature, which was something that I always appreciated nature, like, because I felt good when I was in nature. I'd liked a pretty view, but that deep reverence was never really in my life until then. And going through those experiences and stuff was just really, really profound. And I think it's something that influenced me quite profoundly, actually, that when I now seek out nature, I'm doing it in a more, there's just a layer of intention that wasn't there before. And that I do think it is profoundly medicinal, profoundly healing. And that respect for the mother is incredible. And I think, we've definitely disconnected from that as modern humans. And I think the cost of that is dire, because you can, have a seed oil free diet. You can get all your red light and, do your greens powders and your organ pills and all of your biohacks, but if at the crux of it, you're still fundamentally disconnected from life itself, disconnected from nature, which I would say is also disconnected from self. You can't escape that. Eventually it's going to catch up to you because you're kind of like running against the law of life itself.
Right. And it was Hippocrates that said that disease is small daily sins against nature. And so what we've committed is small daily sins against, maybe not so much small anymore, but large sins against nature, especially these days. So now here we are.
Yeah. When did athletics come into your upbringing?
I started wrestling when I was in 3rd grade.
Okay.
And so I've always been involved with sports, and I didn't really start to realize I had a propensity for running until I was like a sophomore in high school.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, your legs can move pretty fast, and I think I've gotten some good genetics from that, and it wasn't too long ago that my ancestors were sprinting after buffalo and throwing spears and bow and arrows off the back of a horse, and so I think they passed on to me some pretty good strength and speed and agility, and eventually I found myself being a pretty decent sprinter, and so I've been doing that for the last 15 years. I mean, I was running before my sophomore year of high school, but there was a point, I think, where I really started to take things seriously, and then I started to get much better. But I've been involved with the sport for a very long time now, and I balance that with martial arts and stuff and weightlifting and everything. But yeah, it's been a fun journey. So.
Yeah, well, it seems like talking about how intricate and connected we all should be to nature, it's not too far of a leap, at least in my mind, to think that one of the fundamental human movement patterns is to run, but to run very fast, to sprint, to like run either for your life because you're running away from something dangerous, or to chase down that animal. And it feels like when I do it, it just feels like almost nothing else can replace the sprinting. And we was talking off air about just the obvious effects that happen to people that dedicate some serious training to becoming a sprinter. They look great. They're more athletic. They often run leaner. They're powerful. They get this hormonal adaptation with testosterone and growth hormone. Do you think that more people would be well served to find their own version of sprinting, even if it's in later life where they've got some, concerns about doing it on their legs because of injuries, but just emulating the sprint patterns, even if it's on a bike or a rower, just that taking yourself to the edge? Like what's the value in that for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think as long as you're taking the steps to make sure your body is in a good state to do these kinds of movements, proper warm-ups, taking care of your body, it should not be a problem. I've seen a lot of people that are in their elderly years still sprinting.
Yeah.
They know how to take care of their body, and they know how to prepare for activities like that. A lot of people that jump into sprinting and they get injured because they don't know how to do things like that. So it's not something you can just jump into. Take the time to learn a good warm-up, learn your own body, what your body needs to do before doing these kinds of activities, and then you can do it, and then you can experience like how fundamentally sprinting changes your body and how you're wired and your hormonal profile. And because I mean I have energy like every day, and I feel very vital, and I think sprinting's been a very big part of that, and I wish more people could experience that. And it seems like a lot of people are just in this low energy state, and I think sprinting can definitely help with that. So yeah,
I say energy is the currency of life, right? Yes. The more of it you've got, the more you can put into the things that you love to create, to even recover. And recovery requires energy. Sleep requires energy. Being present with your loved ones requires energy. So a low energy state is something that nobody wants. Nobody wants to be low energy. And it's funny that movements that look really powerful and explosive, and maybe somebody that hasn't sprinted was like, I could never do that. I don't have enough energy to do that. It's almost backwards. It's doing that gives you the energy, not the other way around. It's almost, it seems counterintuitive at first that the best time to do something like that is when you don't want to do it, is when you're tired, because something happens in the body, whether it's just this cascade of hormones, or the brain-derived nootropic factor from going fast and moving through space. But whatever it is that happens is clearly very energy generative, as long as you finding the right balance and recovery and all of that stuff. And I feel the same way. It's very enlivening for me. It makes me feel very alive and very full of energy.
Yeah, beautifully put. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. When you found grounding in this phase of your career, what did you notice the difference in? Is it more of like, was it recovery, performance, avoiding injury? And what do you think maybe some athletes could potentially benefit from if they prioritized a bit more grounding in their life?
Sure. Yeah. And I touched on this earlier. I got into grounding on the performance side of things. I was getting injured a lot, and so I was basically looking out for ways to that kind of reduce that incidence of injury and help my recovery, help my performances. And I was listening to this podcast on my way home from a training one day. I'm pretty sure I hurt myself, and it was actually with Clint Ober, and I was listening to him, and I was very skeptical at first, and that's why I like when skeptical people find me, because if anything, it makes it more meaningful when they sort of resonate with my message and the message of grounding. And I was like, there's no way these things happen when you go be barefoot on the earth, when you ground. And then I started implementing it. I started sleeping grounded. I started taking grounded lunch breaks, and I started grounding in between my reps at the track. And I was like, wow, I feel like much better right now. I'm sleeping much better. I feel, because normally my training sessions, I will be shot at the end of the session, and the next day will be a little bit rough. But I was waking up, and the next day I was like, I feel pretty good. I feel like I could repeat that session again, and it just it kept going on like that. I was like, okay, there's something here. And then from there, I just realized it's the implications of it are just way further beyond the performance side of things. But I think what athletes can expect to experience is better sleep, so better recovery, better performances. They're going to feel more energetic, and that's huge in and of itself right there. And so, there are a few reasons for that. Your body isn't breaking down as much when you're training grounded and when you're recovering grounded. And that's been shown in people that have developed delayed onset muscle soreness. There's less protein catabolism going on in the body. The white blood cell counts are lower in people that ground as opposed to the control groups that were insulated when they trained. There are a lot of cool things that happen when you train grounded and when you recover grounded. But those are the big reasons why you're going to feel so much better training and recovering grounded.
Yeah, and imagine if you could like drop all that into a pill and sell it as a supplement and quantify it, like you'd be a rich man very quickly, because for athletes that's the be all and end all, right? Better performance, better recovery, less injuries, less muscle breakdown. They're like, yeah, give me some of that, please.
Yeah. And there's been nothing else that's sped up recovery from training. There are ways to alleviate the symptoms of training as far as pain management and stuff, but nothing's been shown to speed up that process or reduce that sort of that high inflammatory state that happens when you grounded, that breakdown. Grounding is the only thing that has this unique effect to do what it does when somebody is recovering and training grounded. So it's a very, very cool, interesting aspect of grounding.
Yeah. Talk to me about your current training load, because I know you do a lot on your sprinting, your lifting, you're trying to get jiu-jitsu into there as well. How much do you think just having all of these lifestyle factors dialed in is allowing you to maintain a high level of output, especially as you age too? Because one of the things we hear, right, is you start getting older, recovery capacity is down. But I think you can move that further and further away when you're getting all of these things right. So what's training like for you these days and trying to manage it all?
Yeah, and I can say confidently that if I wasn't grounding consistently, my body would probably not be responding the way that it is now with all my training load. I'm getting 3 track sessions a week, 3 to 4 lifting sessions a week, mixed in with 2 to 3 jiu-jitsu sessions a week. And so it's a high training load. But again, the grounding makes a big difference in that. I'm taking care of my body as far as recovery goes. Lots of sauna, lots of massage, soft tissue work. But yeah, it's pretty hectic throughout the week, but I like it, and my body is. I'm 31 now, and my body is moving just as well as it did when I was 17.
That's awesome.
I was 18, and a lot of people, ask me how I'm doing it. It's just like, take care of yourself.
Yep.
Take care of yourself. Ground yourself. Put the right things in your body, and your body will carry you a very, very long way when you do those things. And so, and I called it the grounded athlete, not so much to call myself the grounded athlete, is because I think innately everybody's an athlete. And so I didn't mean for the whole name of the business and everything to be non-inclusive. It's just like, I thought it was a cool phrase for somebody to call themselves. So
Yeah.
Grounded athlete.
Yeah.
So.
Say more about that. Everybody's an athlete or got an inner athlete in them.
Yeah. Everybody has some sort of gift. Has some sort of way that their body can move through space in a way that's conducive to something, throwing, running, martial arts. But if you just nurture that, and you expose yourself to that, and you maintain that through recovery and soft tissue work and mobility, everybody can be an athlete. Can everybody be an amazing athlete? No, but I think everybody has some sort of athlete inside of them that is just waiting, especially if it hasn't exposed itself in the past. It's always there. You just have to get it out of there. So
yeah, it seems fundamental to me that the body wants to move, it wants to express, and it makes me sad that there's probably people listening to this even that are health conscious that don't have that thing. They haven't found it, or they had found it and then they just lost it. That I used to love playing basketball or tennis, and wow, I haven't played in 15 years, and now I'm just I'll get my steps in, and that's cool, but like what's the thing that lights you up, man? You mentioned martial arts. It's been a big part of my life. What's that journey been like for you getting into jiu-jitsu?
Yeah, and I got initially into martial arts through kickboxing, and that was a very interesting journey. I think I was a bit angrier back then when I first started, and it was just it was just my outlet.
Same.
And so my coach recognized that, and he knew that I wanted to fight, and so he beat my ass for like months, just kind of walking away bloody from training sessions.
See if you keep turning up.
Yeah. And then he went on to train me for 3.5 years after that, and eventually got into jiu-jitsu. Just because you get tired of getting hit in the head. It's not very sustainable when you need your brain and everything. So, it's been very fun. Jiu-jitsu, I've learned to appreciate over time. It's not fun for everybody the first year. The first year is always pretty rough. You got to get used to getting beat up and just being bottom of the totem pole. But once you start to figure things out, a little bit becomes fun, as with all things. And I'm only a blue belt now, so I feel like I know just enough to not get absolutely wrecked by someone that maybe isn't a high level black belt.
Yes.
It's been a very fun journey. So
it's great. Let's pontificate on that a little bit, because what's very common now is what's up with men, modern masculinity, like we've lost our myth. I do think there is something uniquely about a man, especially during his development, that is like we've got this chip on our shoulder, this rage, this want to fight, want to watch the world burn. It usually calms with age a little bit, but I'm sure you have people message you once your audience gets to a certain size. They do, younger men often will reach out to people that they see as being ahead of them in certain ways and say like, what advice do you have for me? What do you think's going on there? What do you think could be beneficial to focus on for a man to just find more of himself, to find more resilience, to find meaning in life?
Sure. We've got to find your why, I think, and a lot of people, they struggle in finding their why, their purpose and their mission in life, and that's not something I can help them with. That's not something anybody can help them with. Finding your why is a very personal
no one can give
process.
It to you, right?
No one can give it to you, and you have to find it as life goes on. And sometimes people never find it, and that's a very sad fact. Yeah. And it's. I don't know if I can give anybody advice on finding their why, but I think everybody does have a why. It's just a matter of finding it, and not everybody finds it. And a big part for me, I think, was my faith, Christian, and I think God is evident in everything that I do, even with all this grounding stuff. And so, God created man from the dust of the ground, and into his nostrils he breathed the breath of life. And that's in Genesis. And fundamentally what I think that I'm doing is I'm just returning people to this earth that they're formed and made out of by the Most High. And that's a big part of my mission in life and my purpose in life, and that has kept me motivated, and it's kept me strong in everything that I've done. And so, yeah, it is kind of sad that we don't have that sort of rite of passage anymore as men. We don't have the camaraderie that we used to have. We still have this sense as time goes on that as men we need to go be doing something. We need to go die in some needless war or something, doing something crazy. That desire is there, and it's repressed, and I think it makes a lot of men very anxious and very stressed and it's very degenerative. So,
yeah. The rite of passage thing is very interesting, because that is another thing that I've had the privilege of doing, which is derived and steered largely from indigenous populations, like Soul Wander or Vision Quest, for example. Like, I've had the pleasure of doing one of those, and that's a divine, really purposeful, intentional rite of passage. And I only did that when I was like 30 years old. And I think, what my rite of passage before that, what was it, getting a driver's license, or seeing who could drink the most beers on a night out, or seeing who could be the biggest guy on the block, or the guy that was the most successful with the ladies. They were all attempts at initiating the boy into manhood, but they were lacking anything substantial, and I think that's really, it's something we need to think about a little bit more. I don't know that culture is going to just magically provide it for us. We have to maybe initiate ourselves, or look to elders, or look to different traditions that resonate with you, but we do have to find a rite of passage. Otherwise, what we end up with is broken boys that look like men. They're in male bodies. They're 30, 40, 50 years old, but they're still stuck in that like boy energy. They're still stuck in that childlike energy, and they haven't really like crossed over the threshold yet, Right.
A lot of men that are angry, a lot of men that have a lot of energy and know where to direct that energy. When you don't have a direction for that energy, it just kind of just festers and starts to destroy you over time.
Yeah. So I'm glad you came back to your why being more faith-centric and God, because it's always interesting to me when scientifically minded people are also religious and full of faith, because I think a lot of the time we look at those and think that they don't coexist, that like God-fearing, God-believing people are over here, and scientists are like, whatever, it's all science. But I'm curious to speak to someone who is a scientist that believes in God. Did that strengthen your faith in a way, that you get down to the complexity of it all and you're like, of course there's a creator behind this? Or like, was it always there and that fueled it? Or did that cause you to question things?
Sure. And it's always a funny question that I get when people that I talk to. It's like, you studied physics, and like you're really involved with this stuff, and you still believe in God. And that's very interesting. I'm like, why is it so interesting? Because I believe someone, I can't remember the exact person that quoted this, but at the bottom of the cup of natural sciences, you will find God. Yeah. And so, we're really good as humans at explaining how things work, but we're not good at explaining why. And so you can keep asking why with things, and you'll never know why. It's going to be this perpetual process, and we're never going to get to the bottom of that. I don't think we're meant to. I think we're allowed to learn a little thing here and there about God's workings, but we're not meant to know everything. Yeah. And it's a very funny question that I get a lot. But it's like, no, if anything, it's my faith in God has strengthened my love for physics, and my love for physics has strengthened my love for God.
Yeah, that's cool. So, I think I heard Eric Weinstein say that the fundamental issue that the scientific materialists still have to reconcile with is they can explain everything with science, but the one miracle. So even the scientists need the one miracle. And then it kind of, so that's kind of like as deep as you go. If you get to the bottom of the cup, you're left with this God-sized hole that you're like, okay, well, I guess that's God, and I think I resonate with that. We're not supposed to know fully. That maybe feeling is believing, and that's a form of knowing, but we can't know it, and probably don't want to, or will never be able to quantify it exactly, because then faith wouldn't be required. Right. right? And that's part of the magic in the relationship like that, is that there has to be an element of surrender under the great mystery to say, we don't actually know. I have this feeling, but I do have this faith. And maybe that's what guides you.
Yeah, that was incredibly and beautifully put. Couldn't have said it any better. There's something very enchanting about the unknown that you really have to test your faith.
Yes.
And you have to test your comfort and your acceptance with that unknown. And that carries over into all aspects of life, not just, the beginning of the universe.
Yeah.
And the bottom of the cup of this, all these branches of physics and everything. So, yeah, it's very, very beautifully put.
It's very cool, man. How does a scientist start making footwear?
Yeah. And so, can always be barefoot. And so that's where grounding shoes come in. And that's the business that I'm involved with now. And so, I always tell people, you don't need grounding footwear. You don't need grounding shoes. You don't need to buy anything from me. Go outside, go be barefoot, experience it. Let me know what you think. I'm pretty confident that and what you'll tell me, and that it makes you feel better. But yeah, again, it doesn't always, it's not always convenient to be barefoot everywhere, especially when it gets cold. You need to go. The terrain is a little interesting, especially, for like a lot of shit on the ground, and so that's where the shoes come into play. They're a convenience. They're a nice thing to have, and so the whole thing with the grounding shoes is that they utilize conductors, electrical conductors, as opposed to just being fully insulated on the bottom like most shoes. And so that single point of with that conductor allows your body to discharge and be electrically grounded to the earth, and that's testable with a multimeter as well. And so how I got started is I was basically making these long format videos on YouTube, basically compiling the research for grounding. And I was like, I think there's something here. And eventually I found a way to make a living off of it. And I think it's a very beautiful thing when you're doing something that's very meaningful and you think can help a lot of people, but also allows you to make a living. And so it's this nice little medium. And so that's how I got involved. And there's a lot going on right now. These boots, sneakers, shoes, and all that. I have kind of different things for everybody with different tastes.
Yeah.
But, it's been Olympus Earthwear has been sort of my baby for the last 6 years, and it's been a very fun journey. I've been very fortunate to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm very thankful that people trust me and they support what I'm doing, and they support by getting footwear and stuff. So
yeah. What's your relationship like to the craftsmanship side of that? Because I've watched a few videos. It seems like it's very meditative. It's very like all absorbing. It seems like you've got an eye for beauty, to wanting to create something, of good material, good standard, good beauty.
Yes.
How important is that to you?
Yes, I am a sucker for aesthetics, and I'm at the point where I can just kind of zone out, and I can be in this state of zen when I'm making things, when I'm using tools, when I'm using my hands. I think that's a very important thing for anybody to be doing, to be making something with their hands. It's a very beautiful meditative process, and that's what the process does for me, at least. And I wish more people would get involved with this sort of craft and trade domain of life. And I think a lot of people would be much happier just creating things and making things. It doesn't have to be anything useful, or it's useful to you at least. And I wish more people would get involved with that artistic side of themselves. And so it's all in there. That creativity, that desire to make and create is always there. And so I just got to find a way to find an outlet for it. So.
Like the inner athlete that is inside of everyone, there is definitely an inner creator, which I think is an expression of the creator. I always say that people are so creative that they've convinced themselves that they're not creative. Like that's how creative you are. Wait, you had an X post recently that was something like, something along the lines of, whenever you doubt your creativity, think about all the stories you've made up in your head that have changed the way that you live. Right? So we're so creative, man. We've got to lean into it and just alchemize that more positively.
Exactly.
What are you creating next? What excites you to continue to create and contribute?
Man, I really like to make the posts that I make, as far as the grounding post, and basically creating a story out of all the grounding research. And the Earth and Water books, part of that was sort of creating this Bible of grounding research. So it's made for the skeptic to kind of take them through all the bases of what grounding's doing and why it's doing what it's doing. But it's also sort of this story that's taking place throughout the whole book. It's this fictional story that I made up, And it's sort of this dark, eerie story where you're following this character throughout this kind of cyberpunk Blade Runner-esque place, and you're basically helping him destroy this evil entity that's feeding off of insulated souls. And so this whole story is kind of taking place throughout this book, and that's been very fun. I really enjoy the creative writing process, and I'll probably continue that for the rest of my life. It's just, and it took me about 4 years to bring all that together in that book and get that formulated in the way and to get it to where it is now. And I spent a lot of nights just up until, it wasn't the best for my health, I'll give you that,
right.
but it was good for my health in some sense, spiritually.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
And I spent a lot of nights just staying up until 2 or 3 a.m. just like testing that creative aspect of me. And it, oh my gosh, just the passion and the love and just everything that I felt just making that. It's just goes back to just making things, man.
Yeah.
Just making things, whether that's, literature, writing or like actually like physical things, is something very meditative about that. And again, kind of going back to what you said, you are a product of creation, if that's what you choose to believe, and that is embodied in these desires that you have, these internal desires that you have. So
there's definitely something magical about those wee hours in the darkness, when the world is sleeping, and just like getting into something and just letting what comes through, because that's definitely something I pick up from a lot of your videos. There's a very distinct otherworldly style. It's like that Blade Runner vibe is a good way to describe it. Is that something, like, was that always like something that drew you in, or is that something that naturally came out of as you started imagining these worlds and telling these stories, that's the flavor that it took and now you're running with that? And how do you create that?
Yeah, it's actually a dream that I had. I had a dream one night. It was a very vivid dream. I woke up in this sort of large patch of grass. It was sort of this what's the park in New York? I forget.
Central Park?
Central Park, yeah. It's kind of like this Central Park area. Nobody was in this dream. It was just me in this sort of Central Park area, and all I could see around me was just these giant neon skyscrapers and just absolutely pouring rain. And there was something just very enchanting and beautiful, but also eerie about it. And that just stuck with me for a very, very long time. And then like a year after that, I watched a Blade Runner, and I found out about this whole category of cyberpunk. I was like, oh, that's what I dreamed about. And then, I thought it was very interesting because I didn't know about the genre or anything when I had that dream, and that's just carried over into everything that I've made with the book and this whole vibe that I've created, and it's very fun. It makes me excited just talking about it.
It's cool, man.
It's it's fun. It's very distinct too.
Very distinct.
When people see it, they know like it's Rob.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you had that kind of like vision and style pull before actually seeing it. Like I always think about like what's in the collective consciousness or the collective unconsciousness, and like we all tap into it in some way. Like dreams are a very interesting way that we might tap into it, because the veil is very thin between the conscious and the unconscious, and it's very fascinating, man. So keep rocking it, because your style is very unique, and the way that you communicate ideas is very approachable, very, very grounded, and has this undercurrent of the mystery to it too, which is really just like a nice packaging. I think it's really exciting. It's really important, and it's really simple. Like it's right there for everybody, like it's great that you have products. It's great that you have books. Great that you have awesome shoes that you can sell. But really what you're doing is saying, just go put your bare feet in the grass. Go simplify life a little bit. Go move. Go find your inner athlete. Go find your inner creator. And if you need some nice shoes, come over to Olympus.
Absolutely. Simple as that. Yeah. And this whole grounding thing, this whole grounding business is very interesting stuff. It's high ubiquity. You see the earth every day. Sometimes I hope you see the earth every day. You go outside. And usually things that are high ubiquity, you tend to overlook them. It's just very sad. And this whole return to nature, getting yourself healthy again doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be arduous or anything. I think if we take a step back, if we zoom out a little bit, we sort of see how we integrate with the world around us and this universe and this world that we evolved on. And we just change our perspective a little bit. It can help a lot of people in realizing their capacity to heal themselves.
Yes.
And that's what I've been trying to get people to do, is realize their capacity to heal themselves.
Yes. Perception is reality. And I think you're very good at helping people shift the perception, or at least start asking the right questions in order to do that. So I appreciate you, dude. Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tell people where they can just go, handles, tags, etc., so they can make sure they find you online.
Yeah. Instagram is The Grounded Athlete. There's also the Instagram page for the store, which is Olympus Earthwear. Websites, thegroundedathlete.llc.com, olympusearthwear.com. Thegroundedathlete.llc.com is where you'll find all the research, all the videos that I've made, all the the links for the books and everything, and all of more of the personal stuff that I put out. I'd say those are the big ones. And my email, everything's on there. So if you want to reach out, want to talk, and shoot the shit,
right on.
I'm open to that. So.
And you've also got the professionally unhinged Earth Pappy too.
Yes, that is the online alias Earth Pappy or Earth Papito on X. And I said that one day, and it was just meant to be this funny thing, and then people started calling me.
Sticks.
And so I was like, yeah,
that's how it goes.
So it sounds like this really corny pornography name, but now it's just kind of there. And so
hey, if the grounded business fails, then Earth Papito will be taking over the world.
Yeah.
Well, dude, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you for inviting me.
You lot, go get those dogs in the grass. Go ground after this. Even better still, listen to this whole thing while grounded. That's really what we want. And we'll see you next time. Stay radical. Peace. All right, friends, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps to spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.